Monks in D&D are a bit of a mixed bag in terms of overall playability. They're widely regarded as one of the weaker classes in the game for a variety of reasons. So in this video, we'll be going over some of the magic items that can help cover a monk's weaknesses or help strengthen what they're already good at doing in the first place. And sprinting into action at number 10 on this list is the Boots of Speed from the Dungeon's Master's Guide. This pair of rare boots requires attunement in order to use, and grants the user the benefit of using their bonus action to click their heels and gain double their walking speed, as well as forcing creatures to roll attack rolls against you for opportunity attacks with disadvantage. You can click your heels together to end the effect as well. However, once you've used the boots property for a total of 10 minutes, you can no longer use them again until you finish a long rest. Doubling your movement speed as any character is already going to be strong to begin with. But monks have a special case where doubling your movement speed is outstanding. This is because of their unarmored movement feature, granting them an extra plus 10 to your movement speed at 2nd level, while not wearing any armor or wielding a shield, and another 5 feet of movement every 4 levels, up to a total of 30 extra movement. This means that a character with a normal movement speed of 30 feet eventually has 60 feet of movement at 17th level, which can then be doubled by the Boots of Speed for 120 feet of movement per turn without any kind of special actions or bonuses like dashing or haste. And if you wanted to go even further, you can increase your movement again by taking the mobile feat, which grants a flat plus 10 to your movement speed amongst other benefits. Overall, an amazing item for when you want to close the gap on multiple enemies or attack different targets, or even run away in a pinch. Essentially, the Boots of Speed allow you to reposition yourself anywhere on the battlefield, and can even allow for jump shenanigans if your wizard casts jump on you, or you have something like a ring of jumping, since the distance you're able to long jump are heavily dependent on how much movement you actually have left over. But movement isn't everything in D&D 5e, which is why the Boots of Speed can't be any higher on this list. However, it is worth mentioning since it does grant one of the biggest boosts of speed to any given character, which is a powerful enough feat all on its own. And at number 9, we have the Bracers of Defense from the Dungeon's Master's Guide. These are rare bracers which require attunement, and come with the simple effect of granting a flat plus 2 bonus to your AC, so long as you're not wearing any armor or using any shields. While very useful for spellcasters, the main benefactor of this magic item, monks thrive on using the Bracers of Defense as well due to their unarmored defense feature, allowing them to calculate their own AC entirely differently to other classes, so long as they're not wearing any armor or wielding a shield. Instead of the usual 10 plus your dexterity modifier, a monk's AC can be calculated as 10 plus their dexterity modifier plus their wisdom modifier. Depending on how you build your monk, this equates to about 17 AC at early levels, assuming you have something like an 18 in dex and a 16 in wisdom. So turning this AC into a 19 as early as 5th level, where rare items tend to start appearing in the first place, is pretty solid when you compare this with full plate mail, which grants a flat 18 AC with no bonuses. You can also pair this with a Cloak of Protection and a Ring of Protection for some extra defense, but then you're left with little room for any offensive magic items or other unique effects that might come in handy. That being said, however, being able to have a flat plus 2 bonus to your AC all on a single item that also synergizes with your own class feature is a fantastic effect to have. Unfortunately, like with the Boots of Speed, that's all the bracers really have going for it. While it's a nice defensive increase to help you avoid more attacks, there are plenty of magic items that do a lot more for a monk to make them stand out, more than just a couple of points of AC. But again, worth mentioning due to how it synergizes with one of the monk's key class features, making it worthy of number 9 on this list. And at number 8, we have the Belt of Giant Strength from the Dungeon's Master's Guide. These set of belts all come in different varieties and rarities that bolster your strength to enormous heights. Starting from the rare Belt of Heal Giant Strength, this sets your strength score to 21, granting you a sizable bonus to your strength if you've been focusing more on dex for your main stat. At the very rare tier, you have the Belt of Stone Giant Strength and Belt of Frost Giant Strength that both set your strength score to 23, while the Belt of Fire Giant Strength sets it to 25. And lastly, we have 2 legendary tier belts. The Belt of Cloud Giant Strength sets your strength to 27, while the Belt of Storm Giant Strength sets it to an incredible 29. So if you're looking to not only cover your lack of strength, but to increase it to new heights, then this magic item is for you. Having a better strength score makes you better at punching things like grappling and attacking, but can also help you jump better and punch boulders out of your way. This is also a great way to pivot your monk build into a more strength-based one if you've been investing a lot in dexterity for higher AC and initiative. That way you can have the best of both worlds. While the belts technically have the same weakness as the previous two entries of only increasing one aspect of your character, strength does have multiple uses, and has many ties to saving throws, ability checks like athletics, and influences damage and accuracy of your strength-based weapons. It just makes sense that the Belt of Giant Strength takes a higher spot on this list in comparison. That being said, while having a higher strength score does cover one of the monk's weaknesses of wanting to have good stats in so many places, this sort of falls apart if you happen to be running more strength on a monk than dexterity, which can feel bad if you happen to come across one of these belts when you haven't thought about min-maxing your stats for it in anticipation. However, even if you aren't building for the belt or expecting them, it's always nice to have the power of the gods in your hands regardless. And punching through number 7 on this list, we have the Wraps of Unarmed Prowess from the Book of Many Things. This is a magic item that starts as an uncommon +1 variant, but can be found as a rare +2 or a very rare +3 version, all of which give you a bonus to your attack and damage rolls made with your unarmed strikes equal to the variant of wraps you equip, while also making your unarmed strikes magical for the purposes of overcoming immunity to resistances and non-magical attacks and damage. These are essentially akin to the normal +1 to +3 weapons you would otherwise obtain with any other builds. Except these wraps finally let you have a reliable way of living your dream of punching things all the time if you want to, rather than switching to a weapon that is just flat out better because of their innate bonuses to damage and attack rolls that you would otherwise not get. However, what makes these wraps unique compared to other weapons is the fact that they do, in fact, wrap around your hands, which isn't technically the same as wielding a weapon in that hand. So, as a boxer would wear boxer gloves on their hands after wrapping them, you could technically do the same thing with something like a Wyrmreaver Gauntlet, a magical item we'll go over more in depth later, hint hint, which lets you deal an extra 1d6 force damage every time you hit something with an unarmed strike, amongst other things. And since these wraps don't actually require you to attune to them, you can combo with them with a lot of other things, like the Insignia of Claws from Hoard of the Dragon Queen to give yourself another +1 to attack and damage rolls with your unarmed strikes. Again, no attunement required. Overall, the Wraps of Unarmed Prowess is a pretty sizable damage buff to monks and puts their unarmed strikes in line with other upgraded weapons, but comes with a bit of added flexibility due to technically not occupying your hands, which comes with a lot of combo potential if you're smart enough about it. Which is why the Wraps of Unarmed Prowess take number 7 on this list. But before we move on, it is worth mentioning that there does exist a unique form of wraps called the Wraps of Diamok from Tal'Darai Campaign Setting Reborn book by Matt Mercer. This is a magic item that can only be attuned to by monks and comes with a dormant, awakened, and exalted state that you would normally unlock throughout the course of a campaign. The dormant state grants you a +1 bonus to your attack and damage rolls, while also granting you temporary hit points equal to the number of your total key points whenever you finish a short or long rest. The awakened version makes the +1 into a +2 and adds the additional benefit to Misty Step once per short or long rest, or until you land a critical hit with an unarmed strike against a hostile creature. Finally, the exalted version turns that +3 bonus into a +3, and gives you the ability to deal an extra 66 necrotic damage to a creature you strike while restoring hit points equal to the amount of necrotic damage dealt. You can only use these properties once per long rest, or until you land a critical hit on a hostile creature with an unarmed strike. While this is technically third-party content, enough players hold Matt Mercer's content in such high regards that it may as well be official content at this point. However, since this list more or less covers actually official content made by Wizards of the Coast, we can't really place the Wraps of Diamok on this list. That said, considering how rare proper magic items for monks can be, the Wraps of Diamok feel worth mentioning as a sort of honorable mention alongside the Wraps of Unarmed Prowess, if nothing else. And at number 6, we have the Staff of Striking from the DMG. This very rare staff grants you a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with it while you're attuned to it, while providing one additional effect. The staff comes with 10 charges, and you can expend up to 3 of those charges at a time whenever you hit a creature with a melee attack using it, dealing 1d6 force damage per charge you expend, effectively giving you a mini Divine Smite a few times a day. There isn't really much to say about this weapon other than it's just a really solid magic item that deals solid damage and bonus force damage, which happens to be the best damage type in the game since nothing really resists it. You do have to roll a d20 if you ever expend the last slot to ensure the staff doesn't permanently lose all of its magical power, which it will if you roll a 1. However, it does recharge at a rate of 1d6 plus 4 charges every knot, so as long as you're not expending the final charge, you're getting 5 charges back at minimum every single day, which allows you to let loose a bit when taking advantage of the extra force damage. While a fantastic monk weapon to have, especially at very rare tier, over the years there have been plenty of weapons that pretty much outshine the Staff of Striking, which is why it doesn't appear higher on this list. That being said, the Staff of Striking is still a solid weapon overall, as it is just a +3 weapon with an additional smiting effect that you can activate at any time, such as when scoring a critical hit so that you can deal an extra 66 force damage in a pinch. Other than that, however, there isn't really much going for it, but still worth mentioning as it is a fan favorite and it's still fairly useful otherwise. And at number 5, we have the Cloak of Displacement from the DMG. This rare cloak grants you the ability to make all attack rolls against you a disadvantage as long as you're attuned to it while wearing the cloak. However, you lose this benefit if you ever take any damage or get hit with some form of ground control that hinders movement in any way, or become incapacitated or restrained. If you're damaged, however, the benefit is only suspended until the start of your next turn. Now, we've gone over the Cloak of Displacement before, but basically, the cloak is extremely powerful for any character to have, simply because it just makes it harder for most enemies to target you with anything that requires an attack roll. It's a very combat warping item that can theoretically be available as soon as your party reaches 5th level, being only a rare item after all. However, as mentioned previously, the Cloak of Displacement is not without its weaknesses, as an enemy can just simply cast the Burning Hand spell, for example, to force damage onto you even if you make your saving throw to have the damage, and thus turning the cloak off for that turn and leaving you open to attacks. As for why this item takes number 5 spot on this list, it's mainly due to the fact that, while very powerful, there are plenty of other options that are just better for monks, in terms of how it affects gameplay. Like with previous entries on this list, the Cloak of Displacement only affects one different aspect of a monk, and the thing it affects isn't really something that impacts a monk's game plan all that much. The cloak is a generic item that works for everyone in pretty much the same way, by not letting you get hit as often. That being said, the Cloak of Displacement still continues to be worth mentioning just because of how strong it is of an item generically, so it deserves a spot on this list for that alone. And at number 4, we have the Dragonhide Belt from Fizbank's Treasury of Dragons. This belt requires attunement by a monk and comes in 3 flavors: uncommon, rare, and very rare. Starting from uncommon, the belt grants a +1 bonus to your saving throw DCs of your key features, and allows you to regain key points equal to a roll of your martial arts die as an action once per day. The only difference between the rare and very rare variants is that the bonus increases to a +2 and a +3 respectively. This seems like a simple magic item at first glance, since it allows you to use your key features more reliably, while also giving you a way to restore your key points on a whim. But as simple as it may sound, there are a lot of key features that monks can make use of because of their subclasses. Way of the Open Hand is a good example of this, as they can force a dex saving throw against a target hit by flurry of blows to knock them prone, or force a strength saving throw to push them up to 15 feet away from you. Meanwhile, at 17th level, you can gain Quivering Palm, which lets you expend 3 key points whenever you hit a creature to induce imperceptible vibrations, and then detonate that creature using your action, forcing a Constitution saving throw. If it fails, its hit points are reduced to 0, and if it succeeds, it takes 10d10 necrotic damage instead. This is a big one, because instantly killing an extremely powerful boss is the best possible outcome of any saving throw you can have. But that's not even the best use of the Dragonhide Belt. While you can use the belt for niche features from subclasses, the best use of the save DC bonus for the belt would be to make your Stunning Strike much harder to avoid. Stunning Strike is a feature available to every monk at 5th level, and allows you to spend 1 key point anytime you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, forcing that creature to make a Constitution saving throw, or be stunned until the end of your next turn if they fail. This is debatably one of the best, if not the best, class feature to ever grace the D&D table. See, while the DC for Stunning Strike tends to be on the lower side due to using your Wisdom over any other stat, which most monks aren't going to focus on, there is a severe lack of a once per turn clause on it, meaning you can just spam it every time you hit a creature, because odds are, at least one of those punches is going to go through. This is also a great way to burn through a boss's legendary resistances at relatively no cost to you, since you can just regain key points with a short rest, or some other feature that allows you to regain them during combat. Bosses generally don't want to be stunned, so they are usually forced to burn a legendary resistance if you get lucky and they fail their saving throw. That being said, Stunning Strike does possess the weakness of targeting Constitution, the worst stat to target in the game due to the amount of creatures that have it as their highest stat, which does decrease the overall effectiveness and chances of landing a Stunning Strike. However, with the inclusion of the Dragonhide Belt, this is now less of a problem, since this helps elevate Stunning Strike's save DC to new heights, especially if you decide to focus Wisdom as your primary stat, which sounds ridiculous at first until you realize there is not only a way to focus Wisdom as your primary stat, but you can also do so without sacrificing your other stats as much. This is where the Way of the Astral Self subclass comes in. At 3rd level, you gain the Arms of the Astral Self subclass feature, which you can activate by using your bonus action to spend 1 key point to summon spectral arms that force dexterity saving throws against creatures of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of you, dealing force damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die if they fail. After which, for the next 10 minutes, these spectral arms hover around you in some way and grant you the benefits of letting you use your Wisdom modifier instead of your Strength modifier when making strength saves or strength checks, as well as whenever you make unarmed strikes you make using the spectral arms. Additionally, the arms have a reach of 5 feet greater than normal. And since you don't need to rest to activate this effect, you just need at least 1 key point to activate it. This is a perfect way to basically replace your strength and dexterity builds altogether with a more wisdom focused one. Way of the Astral Self is considered the best subclass for monks, simply because it covers all the weaknesses that monks typically have, which is the need for multiple stats. Now, aside from dexterity for some extra AC and initiative, you can effectively make a monk that can not only have a 20 wisdom without sacrificing any of their main sources of damage, they can also end up with a Stunning Strike that has a save DC on par with spellcasters. Even without Way of the Astral Self monk cheese, however, the Dragonhide Belt is still excellent to have, since increasing your chance to skip an enemy's turn is invaluable in any combat situation, which is why this item takes such a high spot on this list despite its simple effect. And at number 3, we have the Eldritch Claw Tattoo. This uncommon tattoo requires you to attune to it via a special needle that turns into the ink required to apply it. And what it does is it makes your unarmed strikes magical for the purposes of overcoming immunity and resistances to non-magical attacks, while also providing a nice +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with unarmed strikes. More interestingly, once per day you can spend a bonus action to strengthen yourself with the tattoo's inner power for 1 minute, during which your melee weapon attacks and unarmed strikes gain a reach of 15 feet and all deal an extra 1d6 force damage on hit. If you've ever taken a level in Warlock to unlock the Hex spell to deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to a creature every time you hit them, this works exactly the same way, but with force damage instead of necrotic damage, and applies to your hits rather than a single creature being affected by it. Hex also has the ability to cripple a creature's ability checks with a chosen stat, but the purpose of bringing up Hex is to showcase how the tattoo functions in terms of how it applies the extra damage. That being said, however, there definitely isn't anything stopping you from also taking Hex and dealing an extra 2d6 bonus damage per hit for a total of 8d6 extra damage per turn if you land both hits on your attack action and your flurry of blows. However, we do have to rank the Eldritch Claw Tattoo on its own merits, which, as you can probably tell, being able to deal a bonus 4d6 extra force damage per turn is still incredible, as damage is the main game of Dungeons & Dragons. While conditions and other forms of crowd control are great tools to have, most of the time it's just better to forsake such frivolous measures and just go for the kill instead. So being able to just deal more damage outright will almost always be a better option than trying to grapple someone or shove them or knock them prone. Bosses tend to be an exception, but bosses also tend to have legendary resistances as well. So we're going back to square one. Being able to deal extra damage is a universal solution when a boss happens to have immunity to certain conditions. So the extra damage from this tattoo being force damage is also what makes this magic item rank so highly on this list, since force damage isn't resisted by like 99% of creatures you encounter, unless your DM homebrews them to be. The +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls of unarmed attacks provided by Eldritch Claw Tattoo is also worth noting, as this bonus can stack with the bonuses from the Wraps of Unarmed Prowess and the Insignia of Claws for a whopping +5 bonus to your unarmed attack and damage rolls at the overall cost of 1 attunement slot, which is pretty great for monks. That being said, while the Eldritch Claw tattoo is pretty powerful, there's actually a magical item that does what the Eldritch Claw can do, but much better. Introducing the Wyrmreaver Gauntlets as our pick for the number 2 spot on this list. These gauntlets hail from Bigsby Presents Glory of the Giants, and are a very rare set of gauntlets that require attunement and come with some familiar properties. While wearing the gauntlets, you deal an extra 1d6 force damage on hit. You also get to choose one damage type between acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison whenever you finish a long rest, and gain resistance to that damage type until you finish another long rest. The gauntlets also come with a dragon rune engraved on it that you can invoke once per day using your bonus action and summon 2 enormous spectral fists that envelop the gauntlets and mimic your hand motions for 1 minute. What this means mechanically is that your reach with unarmed strikes that you make on your turn become 30 feet, and when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack using your unarmed strike, they must make a successful strength saving throw or fall prone. Like the Eldritch Claw tattoo, the Wyrmreaver Gauntlets let you deal an extra 1d6 force damage whenever you land a hit. But unlike the tattoo, this bonus damage is always on. While the extra reach of both items do require you to invoke the respective item, the reach of the Wyrmreaver Gauntlets is just better overall. While you don't get the +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with your unarmed strikes, being able to have a free damage resistance to one of 5 damage types, as well as the added chance to make a creature fall prone, more than makes up for it, even if the latter only applies to opportunity attacks. Of course, you can combine both of the bonus damage of the gauntlets with the bonus damage gained from the Eldritch Claw tattoo, and even Hex for a huge damage increase per hit if you really wanted to. But on its own, the Wyrmreaver Gauntlets is just a better Eldritch Claw tattoo, and can work as a fantastic upgrade later on in the campaign, since the tattoo is uncommon, and thus easier to come across than the gauntlets. However, depending on your perspective, the Eldritch Claw tattoo might technically be better than the gauntlets on virtue of availability alone. Regardless, both items are fantastic and deserve a high spot on this list no matter what, but don't deserve the same spot since the gauntlets do have the edge in terms of overall performance. And for our number 1 pick, we have the Gloves of Soul Catching from Candlekeep Mysteries. These legendary gloves require attunement and grant you a lot of powerful effects. Firstly, while wearing the gloves, your constitution score is set to 20 if it's not 20 or higher. The second and most important benefit is it allows you to choose one of 2 options when making a successful unarmed strike. You can either deal an extra 2d10 force damage and heal yourself for the amount of force damage dealt, or instead of regaining hit points from the force damage you dealt, you can choose to gain advantage on one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw you make before the end of your turn. Firstly, these gloves work as a better amulet of health, a rare pendant that sets your constitution to 19, by setting your constitution to 20 for the extra +1 you'd get out of it in comparison. Secondly, in terms of overall damage increase, the Gloves of Soul Catching are pretty much unparalleled since the additional force damage isn't on a hard once per turn. Whenever you hit with your unarmed strikes, you can just deal an extra 2d10 extra damage. And once again, force damage is the best damage type in the game, which already makes it better than any previous entries on this list damage-wise. Not only that, but you also gain a bit of healing from the extra damage, which can really buff up your sustain since you'd be making at least 4 attacks as a typical monk for an extra 8d10 bonus damage, which translates into 8d10 healing per turn. Not only that, but if you're not hurting for healing, you can instead just give your next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw advantage while still maintaining that extra damage at the same time. The mix of amazing damage, self-sustain, and gaining advantage on any 1d20 roll you make before the end of your next turn are already powerful effects to have on an item as is. But having these effects not be tied to any sort of once per turn clause means that you are a walking, punching machine that dishes out so much punishment that every other martial would be jealous. This holds especially true if you combine this with the Eldritch Claw tattoo, the +3 wraps of unarmed prowess, and the insignia of claws, for an extra 1d6 +4 damage per hit, which is scary to think about. There are probably other ways you can go even further beyond, but that's besides the point. The Gloves of Soul Catching are just so dang powerful with multiple effects that can proc per hit, and with 0 downsides that it's a no-brainer that they take the number 1 spot on this list by a long shot.